Belly fat is not simply about how we look in the mirror. It's a visible sign of an invisible process, inflammation smoldering deep inside the body. This chronic, low-grade inflammation is the root cause of so many modern health problems, and it's the very reason why fat seems to cling stubbornly around the middle, no matter how little we eat or how much we move. When the body is inflamed, it's in a state of stress. That stress shuts down efficient fat burning because the body thinks it needs to survive, not thrive. At the heart of this process are the mitochondria, the tiny energy factories inside every cell. These mitochondria are responsible for converting food into usable energy. But when inflammation takes hold, it damages these delicate structures. The result is poor energy production, fatigue, and a metabolism that slows to a crawl. Instead of burning fat for fuel, the body begins to store it, particularly around the organs, forming visceral fat, the most dangerous type. Inflammation doesn't just affect energy, it disrupts hormones too. Insulin becomes less effective, cortisol levels rise, and thyroid function slows down, a perfect storm for weight gain. You might feel tired all the time, crave sugar for a quick energy fix, and notice that the fat around your belly refuses to budge. This isn't about willpower or calories. It's about a metabolic system that's been hijacked by inflammation. Over the next few moments, we'll explore exactly how this hidden inflammation develops, how it blocks your fat burning pathways, and the key nutritional and lifestyle strategies that can calm inflammation, repair mitochondrial function, and switch your body back into its natural fat burning state safely, effectively, and sustainably. Inflammation in its acute form is a vital survival mechanism, the body's way of defending against injury, infection, or toxins. It's what allows a wound to heal and a virus to be cleared. But when inflammation becomes chronic, the same protective process turns destructive. Instead of switching off once the threat has passed, the immune system remains on high alert, releasing inflammatory chemicals that silently damage tissues, disrupt hormones, and alter metabolism. This state of ongoing low-level inflammation has become the background noise of modern living, a constant immune irritation driven by poor diet, chronic stress, environmental toxins, infections, and mitochondrial dysfunction. In this inflamed state, the immune system releases messenger molecules known as cytokines. These are small proteins designed to communicate between immune cells. In acute inflammation, cytokines are helpful. They recruit white blood cells to the site of injury, but when they are chronically elevated, they begin to interfere with normal cellular signaling. Cytokines such as TNF-alpha IL-6 and CRP act directly on the body's metabolic machinery, particularly in the liver, muscle, and fat tissue. They make these cells less sensitive to insulin, the hormone responsible for moving glucose into cells for energy. As insulin resistance develops, the body compensates by producing even more insulin. High insulin levels prevent stored fat from being broken down, effectively locking fat inside the cells. At the same time, inflammation disrupts another key metabolic hormone, leptin. Leptin is produced by fat cells and communicates with the brain to regulate appetite and energy expenditure. In a healthy system, high leptin levels tell the brain that enough energy is stored, signaling satiety. But in the inflamed body, cytokines block leptin's message. The brain becomes leptin resistant, mistakenly thinking the body is starving even when fat stores are abundant. The result is increased hunger, constant cravings, and a reduced ability to burn fat. This combination, insulin resistance and leptin resistance, is at the heart of stubborn belly fat. Visceral fat, the fat stored around the organs, is particularly problematic. Unlike subcutaneous fat that sits just under the skin, visceral fat is metabolically active. It behaves almost like an organ in itself, releasing inflammatory cytokines and free fatty acids directly into the bloodstream. The liver, positioned nearby, is bombarded by these inflammatory signals, worsening insulin resistance and fat accumulation. This creates a vicious cycle. Inflammation causes fat storage, and stored fat feeds more inflammation. Over time, the body becomes trapped in this self-perpetuating loop, where inflammation and fat reinforce each other. To visualize what's happening, imagine your metabolism as a well-tuned engine. Under normal circumstances, your cells burn fat efficiently to produce clean energy, much like a car engine running on high-quality fuel. But chronic inflammation is like pouring sand into that engine. The gears grind, efficiency drops, and the engine starts to overheat. The mitochondria, the cell's powerhouses, become damaged by oxidative stress, a byproduct of inflammation. Their ability to generate energy from fat is impaired. The body, starved of cellular energy, switches to easier, quicker fuel sources such as sugar. As a result, fat burning shuts down and fat storage becomes the default mode. This explains why many people with chronic inflammation feel tired yet wired. The body is flooded with inflammatory stress signals. Cortisol levels rise and blood sugar swings wildly. Cortisol, the stress hormone, further encourages fat storage around the abdomen. It's a biological strategy meant for short-term survival, storing energy for a perceived emergency. But in a chronically inflamed environment, cortisol remains elevated for months or years, adding fuel to the metabolic fire. The more visceral fat accumulates, the more it acts as an endocrine organ, producing hormones and inflammatory chemicals that further disrupt metabolism. Studies show that people with high levels of visceral fat have elevated CRP and IL-6, both markers of systemic inflammation. These same molecules are linked to insulin resistance, type 2 diabetes, and cardiovascular disease. What's critical to understand is that this process doesn't occur in isolation. It's happening in nearly every cell and tissue of the body. From the liver struggling to detoxify, to the gut leaking inflammatory molecules into the bloodstream, to the brain becoming foggy from disrupted signaling, inflammation touches every system. Even when someone is eating less and exercising more, the inflamed body resists change. The mitochondria are underperforming, the hormones are misfiring, and fat stores are biochemically locked. This is why many people feel stuck despite their best efforts. The issue isn't a lack of discipline, it's a physiological block. Until inflammation is addressed, the body cannot fully access its stored energy reserves. Clinically, this can be compared to a malfunctioning thermostat in a heating system. The thermostat represents the brain's metabolic control. The hypothalamus. Inflammation distorts the thermostat's readings. Even when there's plenty of stored fuel fat, the brain perceives an energy shortage. It sends out signals to eat more and conserve energy. The body slows down metabolism, increases appetite, and stores more fat. Only by correcting the underlying inflammation, cleaning the contacts of the thermostat, can the system return to balance. This deeper understanding of inflammation reframes how we view stubborn belly fat. It's not simply an issue of calories in versus calories out. It's a complex immune and metabolic disorder where inflammatory molecules hijack hormonal control, impair energy production, and trap the body in fat storing mode. The real solution lies not in restriction, but in restoration, calming inflammation, healing the mitochondria, and reprogramming the body to burn fat efficiently again. This requires identifying the sources of inflammation, whether from poor diet, chronic infections, gut imbalance, or environmental toxins, and addressing them systematically. Only then can the body shift from a state of metabolic survival to one of vibrant energy and natural fat loss. The mitochondria are at the very core of human metabolism. They are tiny structures within our cells whose main job is to convert the food we eat into usable energy in the form of ATP. Every organ, every thought, every muscle contraction depends on mitochondrial energy. When these energy factories are working efficiently, the body runs smoothly. We feel alert, strong, and metabolically balanced. But when mitochondria become damaged, the entire system falters, energy production drops, the metabolic rate slows, and the body can no longer effectively burn fat for fuel. Chronic inflammation is one of the primary forces behind this breakdown. Inflammation generates a storm of free radicals, unstable molecules that attack cell structures in search of electrons. These free radicals damage the delicate membranes and enzymes inside the mitochondria, a process known as oxidative stress. Under normal circumstances, the body keeps oxidative stress in check using antioxidants produced internally and obtained from food. However, when inflammation is constant, driven by poor diet, environmental toxins, stress, infections, or lack of sleep, free radical production exceeds the body's antioxidant capacity. The mitochondria, being both the main producers and targets of free radicals, are particularly vulnerable. Their membranes become leaky, their DNA becomes damaged, and their enzyme systems begin to fail. The mitochondrial membranes are especially important because they control the flow of electrons that drive ATP production. This process, known as oxidative phosphorylation, is like a finely tuned electrical circuit. Inflammation disrupts that circuit. When the membranes become oxidized or inflamed, the flow of electrons leaks and energy output drops. Instead of producing clean energy, the system generates even more free radicals. deepening the damage. This creates a downward spiral. Inflammation damages mitochondria. Damaged mitochondria produce more inflammation, and energy production collapses further. As mitochondrial efficiency declines, fat oxidation, the process of burning fat for energy, becomes impaired. The enzymes responsible for transporting fatty acids into the mitochondria, such as carnitine palmitoyltransferase, function less effectively in an inflamed environment. As a result, fatty acids accumulate in the bloodstream and within cells, contributing to insulin resistance and further inflammation. The body becomes stuck in sugar burning mode, relying on quick bursts of glucose to meet its energy needs. This shift explains why so many people with chronic inflammation experience constant fatigue, brain fog, and sugar cravings. Their cells are literally starving for energy because the mitochondria can no longer access fat efficiently. This mitochondrial slowdown has visible and measurable consequences. A reduced metabolic rate means fewer calories burned at rest. Even with exercise, endurance suffers because muscle cells cannot sustain energy production. People may notice they tire easily, recover poorly from physical activity, and gain weight even on modest amounts of food. The body, sensing an energy shortage, switches to conservation mode, lowering thyroid function, slowing digestion, and increasing fat storage. It's the same biological program designed to help us survive famine, but now it's triggered by inflammation rather than starvation. From a biochemical perspective, the mitochondrial enzymes responsible for energy conversion depend on minerals, vitamins, and cofactors such as magnesium, B vitamins, coenzyme Q10, and L-carnitine. Inflammation depletes these nutrients faster, while oxidative stress interferes with their recycling. The result is further inefficiency in ATP production. The person may feel constantly exhausted, mentally sluggish, and unable to maintain steady energy throughout the day. This isn't just a subjective feeling. Laboratory studies show that people with chronic fatigue or metabolic syndrome often exhibit measurable mitochondrial dysfunction. Toxins and pollutants exacerbate the problem. Heavy metals such as mercury, cadmium, and lead, along with chemicals like pesticides and plasticizers, accumulate in tissues and directly inhibit mitochondrial enzymes. They block the Krebs cycle, the sequence of chemical reactions that convert food into energy. Chronic exposure to these substances keeps the mitochondria in a state of low-grade distress. The body responds with more inflammation, trying to protect itself, but this only adds to the oxidative burden. Over time, energy production continues to decline and fat storage increases because the body cannot metabolize energy efficiently. The good news is that mitochondrial damage is not always permanent. These structures are remarkably adaptable when given the right environment to repair and regenerate. The first step is reducing the sources of inflammation that cause the damage in the first place. That means addressing poor diet, removing processed foods, refined sugars, and industrial seed oils that drive oxidative stress, replacing them with anti-inflammatory nutrients such as omega-3 fatty acids, antioxidants from colorful vegetables, and phytonutrients from herbs and spices begins to calm the inflammatory response. A nutrient-rich diet replenishes the very cofactors that mitochondria need to function: B vitamins for energy metabolism, magnesium for enzyme activation, and coenzyme Q10 to support the electron transport chain. Supporting detoxification is equally vital. The liver is the body's main detox organ, and its performance directly affects mitochondrial health. When detox pathways are overwhelmed, toxins circulate longer in the bloodstream, continuing to attack mitochondria. Adequate hydration, fiber intake, and regular bowel movements ensure that toxins are eliminated efficiently. Sweating through exercise or sauna use, when tolerated, can also assist in reducing the body's toxic load. Certain nutrients such as glutathione, alpha-lipoic acid, and N-acetylcysteine play a key role in protecting and regenerating mitochondrial membranes from oxidative stress. Lifestyle also exerts a profound influence. Chronic psychological stress keeps the nervous system in fight or flight mode, raising cortisol and adrenaline, both of which increase free radical production. Restoring a balance between activity and recovery through deep sleep, meditation, or breathing practices gives the mitochondria a chance to repair. Movement itself, when done in moderation, stimulates mitochondrial biogenesis, the creation of new mitochondria. This means that regular, gentle exercise not only burns calories, but also expands the body's capacity to produce energy. As mitochondrial function improves, fat oxidation naturally increases. the body begins to prefer fat as its primary energy source once again. Energy levels rise, cravings diminish, and the metabolism becomes more flexible. This is what genuine metabolic healing looks like, not forcing the body to burn fat through deprivation, but restoring the very cellular machinery that allows it to do so efficiently. Clinically, this restoration process can be compared to repairing an electrical grid that has been damaged by years of overload. Simply supplying more electricity or calories doesn't fix the problem. The wiring must be repaired. In the body, those wires are the mitochondrial membranes and enzymes. Once they are restored, energy begins to flow smoothly again. Fat can be mobilized and burned cleanly, producing steady energy instead of the rollercoaster of sugar highs and crashes. Understanding mitochondrial dysfunction shifts the entire conversation about metabolism and weight loss. It's not about willpower or calorie counting. It's about restoring the body's cellular engines by calming inflammation, neutralizing oxidative stress, and nourishing the mitochondria. We reawaken the body's innate ability to generate energy and maintain a healthy weight naturally. Hormones are the body's communication system, constantly sending messages between organs, cells, and the brain to maintain balance. When inflammation becomes chronic, it distorts these signals, creating hormonal chaos that directly drives fat storage, fatigue, and cravings. The body is designed to operate in harmony, insulin regulating blood sugar, cortisol managing stress, and leptin signaling satiety, but inflammation throws this system off balance. The result is metabolic confusion. The body stores energy rather than burning it, even when food intake is moderate. At the center of this disruption is insulin, the hormone responsible for moving glucose from the bloodstream into cells to be used for energy. Under normal conditions after eating, blood glucose rises, and insulin ensures that this glucose is delivered efficiently to muscles and the liver. However, chronic inflammation alters the sensitivity of the insulin receptors on cell membranes. Inflammatory cytokines such as TNF-alpha and IL-6 interfere with insulin signaling pathways, preventing glucose from entering the cells effectively. The pancreas compensates by releasing even more insulin, but the cells remain resistant. This state of insulin resistance is a hallmark of inflammation-driven metabolism. Instead of being used for energy, glucose remains in the bloodstream, and excess sugar is converted into fat, primarily visceral fat around the abdomen. The higher the insulin levels, the more fat is locked away, and the harder it becomes to mobilize those stores for energy. The body becomes stuck in a fat storing mode, with energy trapped inside cells but unavailable to the tissues that need it. This explains why people with chronic inflammation often feel both tired and hungry. The cells are starving for energy while the bloodstream is overloaded with nutrients that can't be utilized. Insulin resistance also promotes fluctuations in blood sugar, creating cycles of energy highs and crashes. When glucose spikes and then rapidly falls, the body interprets it as an energy emergency. The brain signals for quick energy sources, often cravings for sweets or refined carbohydrates. Each episode of overeating or snacking further raises insulin and feeds more inflammation. The cycle becomes self-reinforcing, with inflammation driving insulin resistance and insulin resistance worsening inflammation. Cortisol adds another layer of complexity. Known as the body's stress hormone, cortisol is released by the adrenal glands to help us cope with physical or emotional stress. In the short term, cortisol mobilizes energy by raising blood sugar levels and suppressing non-essential functions. But when inflammation is ongoing, the body perceives constant stress, and cortisol production remains elevated. This chronic cortisol exposure shifts metabolism toward energy conservation and fat storage, particularly in the abdominal region. Cortisol encourages fat to accumulate around the internal organs, creating the dangerous visceral fat that releases even more inflammatory molecules. It also breaks down muscle tissue to provide fuel for the brain during stress, reducing lean body mass and slowing metabolism further. The combination of high cortisol and insulin resistance creates the classic tired but wired state, fatigue, poor sleep, and the feeling of being constantly on edge. Even when resting, the individual may find themselves craving comfort foods, particularly those high in sugar and fat. Because cortisol amplifies the reward centers of the brain, these foods temporarily calm the stress response but perpetuate the inflammatory cycle. Leptin, the third key hormone in this triad, normally acts as the body's energy gauge, Produced by fat cells, it tells the brain when enough energy has been stored and signals to stop eating. In a healthy system, higher fat stores mean higher leptin levels and appetite naturally decreases. However, inflammation blunts the brain's sensitivity to leptin. The cytokines released during chronic inflammation interfere with leptin signaling at the hypothalamus, the part of the brain that regulates hunger and metabolism. The result is leptin resistance. In leptin resistance, even though fat cells are producing plenty of leptin, the brain doesn't receive the message. It interprets the situation as starvation and responds by increasing appetite and reducing energy expenditure. This drives overeating and lowers the metabolic rate, making weight loss almost impossible. It's a biological paradox. The body has excess fat, yet the brain thinks it needs more. The more fat accumulated, and the more leptin is produced, and the more resistant the brain becomes. This creates a self-perpetuating cycle of hunger, fatigue, and fat storage that inflammation keeps alive. All three hormones, insulin, cortisol, and leptin, interact closely. When one becomes dysregulated, the others follow. Chronic inflammation keeps the body in a stress response state, maintaining high cortisol, blocking insulin function, and confusing leptin signaling. This hormonal triad creates the perfect metabolic storm for fat accumulation around the abdomen. The body is essentially locked in survival mode, prioritizing energy storage over expenditure. The good news is that this process is reversible. By addressing the root cause, inflammation, the hormonal communication network can be restored. As inflammation subsides, insulin sensitivity improves. Cells begin to take up glucose efficiently again, reducing insulin levels and allowing fat to be released from storage. Stable blood sugar levels mean fewer cravings, steadier energy, and a reduced drive to overeat. As the inflammatory burden decreases, cortisol levels normalize. The body exits its perpetual stress mode, allowing rest, recovery, and repair to occur. Sleep improves, the nervous system calms, and energy balance returns. With cortisol under control, fat is no longer preferentially deposited around the abdomen. Muscle tissue is preserved, supporting a healthier metabolism and improving the body's capacity to burn fat efficiently. Leptin sensitivity also returns as inflammation cools. The brain once again receives accurate feedback from fat cells, restoring appetite control and satiety. Meals become satisfying, hunger cues normalize, and overeating naturally diminishes. When leptin signaling is restored, the body begins to trust that it has sufficient energy reserves and shifts back into a balanced rhythm of eating and burning. Clinically, this rebalancing process is not achieved through calorie restriction or extreme dieting. It requires reducing the inflammatory triggers that disrupt hormonal communication. Anti-inflammatory nutrition, rich in omega-3 fatty acids, antioxidants, and whole foods, helps normalize hormone function at the cellular level. Adequate sleep, regular movement, stress reduction, and restoration of gut health all contribute to lowering systemic inflammation. Once inflammation is under control, the hormonal pathways that govern metabolism operate as nature intended. Insulin guides energy into cells efficiently, cortisol rises and falls in a healthy daily rhythm, and leptin accurately signals fullness. The body moves out of survival mode and back into homeostasis, where fat burning, appetite control, and stable energy levels occur effortlessly. This is the true foundation of sustainable weight management and metabolic health. Not through external control, but through internal balance restored by reducing inflammation at its source. In today's world, chronic inflammation has become almost unavoidable. Most people live with it unknowingly, thinking fatigue, bloating, and weight gain are simply part of aging. But these symptoms often point to a body under persistent inflammatory stress. It's not one big event that causes the problem. It's the daily accumulation of small, hidden triggers. Understanding where this inflammation comes from is the first step toward reversing it. One of the biggest contributors is diet. The modern diet, dominated by refined carbohydrates, added sugars, and ultra-processed foods, constantly provokes inflammation. Every time we consume these foods, blood sugar spikes, insulin surges, and the body experiences a wave of oxidative stress. High sugar intake promotes the formation of advanced glycation end products, sticky molecules that damage tissues and trigger immune responses. Over time, this constant cycle of sugar highs and lows creates metabolic chaos, insulin resistance, and cellular injury. The mitochondria, trying to process excess glucose, become overloaded and produce more free radicals, further fueling inflammation. Alongside sugar, industrial seed oils are another hidden danger. Oils such as soybean, corn, sunflower, and canola are high in omega-6 fatty acids. While the body needs some omega-6 for normal function, modern diets provide it in massive excess compared to omega-3 fats. Omega-6 fatty acids are easily oxidized during cooking and processing, turning into compounds that directly inflame cell membranes and impair mitochondrial efficiency. When the balance between omega-6 and omega-3 becomes distorted, the body's natural anti-inflammatory mechanisms cannot keep up. The result is systemic inflammation that silently damages blood vessels, joints, and organs. Chronic psychological stress acts as another constant source of inflammation. When we feel stress, the body releases cortisol and adrenaline to prepare for a perceived threat. This is useful in short bursts, but damaging when it becomes chronic. Persistent stress keeps the immune system in a state of overactivation, encouraging the release of inflammatory cytokines. Cortisol, meant to control inflammation, eventually becomes less effective when levels remain high for too long. This paradoxical effect means that long-term stress both suppresses and provokes inflammation simultaneously. The brain, gut, and adrenal glands become caught in a loop of exhaustion and overreaction, leading to fatigue, anxiety, and metabolic slowdown. Sleep, or rather the lack of it, magnifies this problem. Deep sleep is the time when the body carries out repair work, clears toxins from the brain, and restores hormonal balance. When sleep is short, fragmented, or poor in quality, inflammatory markers such as CRP and IL-6 rise measurably. Even a few nights of disrupted sleep increase insulin resistance and appetite, encouraging weight gain. The mitochondria rely on sleep to repair oxidative damage accumulated during the day. Without it, mitochondrial function declines, energy levels plummet, and cravings for quick energy, typically sugar, increase. Environmental toxins also add to the body's inflammatory load. We live surrounded by pollutants, from plastics and pesticides to heavy metals and synthetic chemicals found in household products. These toxins are fat-soluble, meaning they accumulate in body fat, including the visceral fat around our organs. Once stored, they continue to irritate tissues and disrupt cellular communication. The liver, the body's main detoxification organ, becomes overburdened trying to process them. This toxic load increases oxidative stress and blocks normal mitochondrial function, which is essential for energy production and fat metabolism. Even low-level chronic exposure from air pollution or contaminated water keeps the immune system on edge. Another often overlooked source of inflammation is gut imbalance or dysbiosis. The gut is home to trillions of microbes that influence digestion, immunity, and metabolism. When this ecosystem becomes disrupted through antibiotics, poor diet, alcohol, or stress, harmful bacteria can outnumber beneficial ones. These microbes produce toxins that irritate the gut lining, causing it to become permeable, a condition often referred to as leaky gut. When the gut barrier is compromised, bacterial fragments and undigested food particles leak into the bloodstream, triggering an immune response. This process sends inflammatory signals throughout the body, contributing to fatigue, brain fog, and weight gain. Because so much of the immune system resides in the gut, dysbiosis becomes a major driver of chronic inflammation. To visualize how all these factors interact, think of the body's tolerance for stress and toxins as a bucket. This inflammation bucket represents our total capacity to handle daily insults, from diet, stress, and pollution to infections and lack of rest. Each small exposure adds a few drops. A sugary breakfast adds some. A stressful commute adds more. A night of poor sleep or exposure to cleaning chemicals fills it further. For a while, the body can cope. It drains the bucket through detoxification, repair, and antioxidant defenses. But when the input exceeds the body's ability to drain, the bucket overflows, and that's when symptoms appear. Fatigue, pain, weight gain, poor digestion, and hormonal imbalance are simply signs that the bucket is spilling over. What makes this model powerful is that it shows how no single factor has to be extreme to cause damage. Most people's inflammation bucket fills slowly, drip by drip, over years. But the good news is that the process is reversible. By identifying and removing even a few of these triggers, you begin to lower the total inflammatory load. The body is remarkably resilient when given the chance to recover. Becoming aware of your own inflammatory triggers is key. Start by observing how you feel after eating certain foods. Bloating, fatigue, or mood swings often indicate inflammation. Notice your energy patterns. Do you rely on caffeine or sugar to get through the day? Are you sleeping deeply or waking unrefreshed? How often do you feel tense, rushed, or overwhelmed? These signals are clues from the body that your inflammation bucket is nearing capacity. Once these triggers are recognized, Small but consistent changes can make a profound difference. Replacing processed foods with fresh, whole ingredients immediately reduces inflammatory load. Choosing omega-3 rich fats from fish, flaxseed, and walnuts helps rebalance fatty acid ratios. Managing stress through breathing, mindfulness, or nature exposure reduces cortisol-driven inflammation. Improving sleep hygiene, regular bedtime, darkness and screen-free evenings allows repair processes to catch up. Supporting gut health with fermented foods, fiber, and adequate hydration helps restore microbial balance and strengthen the gut barrier. Every step that reduces inflammation also restores mitochondrial efficiency. As inflammation quiets, energy production rises, cravings decrease, and metabolism becomes more flexible. The body shifts from survival mode to repair mode and natural fat burning resumes. Chronic inflammation isn't inevitable. It's a reflection of cumulative exposures that can be identified and corrected. The aim is not perfection, but balance, keeping the inflammation bucket from overflowing so the body can do what it's designed to do: heal, energize, and thrive. The process of reversing inflammation and reawakening the body's natural fat burning ability begins with restoring balance, nutritionally, hormonally, and metabolically. The human body is designed to heal itself when given the right conditions, but modern living constantly interferes with this process. The good news is that inflammation can be reduced, mitochondria can recover, and metabolism can return to its natural rhythm. What's required is not a crash diet or temporary detox, but a steady and structured approach that rebuilds health at the cellular level. Nutrition is the cornerstone. An anti-inflammatory diet provides the raw materials that cells need to repair and the nutrients that calm immune overactivity. The first step is to eliminate the foods that drive inflammation. These include refined carbohydrates, sugary snacks, and ultra-processed products that destabilize blood sugar and flood the body with free radicals. Industrial seed oils such as soybean, corn, canola, and sunflower oil must also be removed, as their high omega-6 content promotes oxidative stress and disrupts cellular membranes. By cutting out these inflammatory triggers, the immune system begins to settle and insulin sensitivity gradually improves. In their place, the diet should center around whole, nutrient-dense foods that provide stable energy and essential anti-inflammatory compounds. A low glycemic approach helps stabilize blood sugar, reducing the insulin surges that promote fat storage. Meals built around clean proteins such as grass-fed meat, wild-caught fish, pasture-raised eggs, or plant-based sources like lentils and hemp seeds supply the amino acids required for repair and hormone production, including healthy fats from olive oil, avocado, nuts, and especially omega-3. Rich foods like salmon, sardines, and flaxseed restores the balance between inflammatory and anti-inflammatory pathways. Omega-3 fatty acids directly calm cytokine activity, stabilize cell membranes, and support mitochondrial efficiency. Equally important are antioxidants, which neutralize the free radicals produced by inflammation. A colorful variety of vegetables and low-sugar fruits provides polyphenols and flavonoids that protect mitochondria from oxidative damage. Berries, leafy greens, cruciferous vegetables, and spices like turmeric and ginger are particularly powerful in reducing inflammatory signaling. These foods also feed beneficial gut bacteria, which play a critical role in regulating the immune system and metabolism. Gut health restoration is another pillar of the anti-inflammatory blueprint. A balanced microbiome protects against inflammation by strengthening the gut lining and preventing toxins from leaking into the bloodstream. To achieve this, the diet must include plenty of fiber from vegetables, nuts, seeds, and small amounts of resistant starch, which provides nourishment for beneficial bacteria. Fermented foods such as sauerkraut, kefir, kimchi, and unsweetened yogurt introduce probiotics that help repopulate the gut with healthy microbes. For those unable to tolerate these foods initially, probiotic supplementation can be helpful. As gut integrity improves, systemic inflammation declines, and energy production rises. Beyond food, lifestyle factors have an equally profound effect on inflammation. Sleep is one of the body's most powerful anti-inflammatory medicines. During deep sleep, the brain clears metabolic waste and the immune system resets. Chronic sleep deprivation, on the other hand, raises cortisol and inflammatory cytokines, creating a consistent sleep schedule, keeping the bedroom dark and cool, and minimizing blue light exposure before bed all support hormonal balance and cellular repair. Quality sleep is not a luxury. It is a metabolic necessity. Stress management is another critical intervention. Chronic stress perpetuates inflammation through constant activation of the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis. Calming this system helps normalize cortisol levels, reduce cravings, and restore insulin sensitivity. Simple practices such as deep breathing, mindfulness, time in nature, or gentle yoga reduce inflammatory signaling. Even brief daily periods of relaxation can have measurable effects on immune regulation. It's not about eliminating stress entirely, but creating regular opportunities for the body to return to balance. Intermittent fasting is one of the most effective strategies for rebalancing inflammation and supporting mitochondrial recovery. When the body is not constantly digesting food, it shifts into a state of cellular repair known as autophagy. This process clears damaged proteins, reduces oxidative stress, and improves insulin sensitivity. A simple fasting window, for example, eating within an 8 or 10-hour period and fasting for the remainder of the day, can be enough to activate these benefits. Fasting also trains the metabolism to access stored fat for fuel, enhancing metabolic flexibility. Gentle, consistent movement completes the blueprint. Exercise acts as a natural anti-inflammatory, improving circulation, increasing antioxidant capacity, and stimulating the production of new mitochondria. The key is consistency rather than intensity. Activities like brisk walking, cycling, swimming, or resistance training improve insulin sensitivity and fat oxidation without overloading the stress response. Overexercising, especially when fatigued, can have the opposite effect by raising cortisol and inflammatory cytokines. The goal is to move regularly but recover fully, keeping the body in a balanced metabolic rhythm. Detoxification support is another often overlooked component because modern life exposes us to a constant stream of chemicals and pollutants. Assisting the body's natural detox systems helps lighten the inflammatory burden. Hydration, sweating through movement, or sauna use, and ensuring regular bowel movements are all essential for effective elimination. Nutrients like glutathione, vitamin C, and alpha-lipoic acid strengthen the body's antioxidant and detoxification pathways, protecting mitochondria from further oxidative damage. This entire blueprint works synergistically. Each component supports the others. Stable blood sugar reduces stress hormones, better sleep improves appetite control, and improved gut health enhances nutrient absorption. Over time, inflammation subsides, energy production normalizes, and the body naturally transitions from fat storage to fat burning. The shift is not forced, it's restored through alignment with the body's original design. Importantly, this approach is not a temporary fix or a quick weight loss plan. It's a sustainable, lifelong strategy for metabolic resilience. Healing from inflammation requires consistency, not perfection. Small repeated actions, choosing real food, resting deeply, managing stress, and moving regularly compound to create lasting change. The body rewards this consistency with more energy, mental clarity, and improved metabolic flexibility. Once inflammation quiets and mitochondria recover, the body no longer needs to hold on to excess fat as a buffer against stress. It begins to operate efficiently again, using energy cleanly and maintaining a healthy weight naturally. By adopting this anti-inflammatory lifestyle, you're not just addressing belly fat, you're transforming the foundation of health itself. Every meal, every breath, every night of sleep becomes a signal to your body to heal rather than defend. The process is gradual but powerful. Over weeks and months, inflammation reduces, hormones rebalance, and the body reclaims its natural ability to burn fat for fuel. The key is to make this your new normal, a way of living that honors the biology of health rather than fighting against it. When chronic inflammation finally begins to subside, a remarkable transformation unfolds, not just in body composition, but in the entire way the body produces and manages energy. Those who have struggled for years with exhaustion, cravings, and stubborn belly fat start to notice changes that go far beyond the physical. Energy returns, brain fog clears, and the emotional heaviness that so often accompanies metabolic dysfunction begins to lift. This is the point at which healing moves from the biochemical to the experiential, when the body and mind start to work together again, in harmony rather than conflict. At the cellular level, this transformation begins with the mitochondria. These tiny organelles, the powerhouses of every cell, are the engines that convert food into usable energy. When inflammation quiets down, the oxidative stress that once damaged mitochondrial membranes and enzymes begins to ease. The machinery of energy production becomes more efficient, allowing fat, the body's preferred stable fuel, to be oxidized cleanly. Instead of relying on quick bursts of glucose, which lead to energy crashes, the body shifts into a smooth, sustained energy state. This is what true metabolic flexibility feels like, the ability to switch effortlessly between burning fat and carbohydrates depending on the body's needs. As mitochondrial function improves, the entire hormonal system comes back into alignment. Insulin sensitivity increases, which means glucose can finally move efficiently into cells for energy rather than being stored as fat. Cortisol levels begin to normalize, ending the cycle of stress-driven fat storage around the abdomen. Leptin signaling, the hormone that tells the brain when you're full, becomes accurate again, restoring natural appetite regulation. Instead of constantly fighting hunger and cravings, people begin to experience a calm, stable relationship with food. Meals satisfy, energy remains steady, and the urge to graze or binge fades because the body is no longer in distress. This restoration of metabolic rhythm has profound effects on mental and emotional well-being. Inflammation doesn't just affect the body, it deeply influences the brain. Chronic inflammatory molecules can cross the blood-brain barrier, triggering fatigue, anxiety, and low mood. As these signals diminish, neurotransmitters like serotonin and dopamine start functioning properly again. The result is a lighter mood, sharper focus, and a renewed sense of motivation. People often describe it as waking up, not only physically, but mentally and emotionally as well. The fog of inflammation lifts and clarity returns. Energy, once scarce and unpredictable, becomes abundant. Instead of dragging through the day with caffeine or sugar, the body produces its own consistent supply. Mitochondria that had been sluggish now operate with clean efficiency, converting stored fat into steady energy. Fatigue dissipates because the cells themselves are no longer struggling to make ATP, the energy currency of life. This shift brings a new kind of stamina, not the restless, wired energy of stress, but a grounded, enduring vitality that lasts from morning to night. Physically, as inflammation decreases and metabolism normalizes, fat distribution changes. The dangerous visceral fat that surrounds the organs, a major source of inflammatory cytokines, begins to shrink. The body no longer sees fat as a defensive storage mechanism, but as an energy reserve that can be used and renewed. Muscle mass improves, posture straightens, and movement becomes easier. Exercise, which once felt exhausting, now energizes because the mitochondria can keep up with the demand. The body regains its natural efficiency, using energy wisely rather than wasting it through inflammatory friction. What's equally important is that this transformation is sustainable. Traditional weight loss methods often rely on calorie restriction or excessive exercise, which place even more stress on the body and lead to rebound weight gain. In contrast, reducing inflammation works with biology, not against it. It restores the systems that naturally regulate hunger, energy, and fat storage. Once inflammation is addressed at its root, through nutrient-rich foods, clean energy metabolism, and restorative lifestyle habits, the body doesn't need to fight to maintain balance. Weight stabilizes effortlessly, energy remains consistent, and health becomes self-maintaining. This renewal also brings a deeper awareness of how connected every system in the body truly is. People begin to understand that fatigue, cravings, poor sleep, and weight gain were never isolated problems, but interconnected symptoms of the same underlying imbalance, inflammation. By calming that internal fire, the body reclaims its innate intelligence. Healing no longer feels like guesswork. It feels like returning to the body's natural blueprint, one that was always designed for vitality. Over time, the effects ripple outward. Skin becomes clearer, digestion improves, and mental resilience strengthens. The immune system, once overactive and misdirected, becomes efficient again, ready to defend against real threats rather than attacking the body itself. Inflammation, once a constant drain, becomes a finely tuned response that activates only when needed and then subsides. The person who once felt trapped in a fatigued, inflamed body now moves through life with lightness and confidence. This is not the result of a miracle supplement or a trendy diet. It's the predictable outcome of restoring biological order. When nutrition is aligned with physiology, when the foods we eat support mitochondrial health, hormonal balance, and cellular repair, healing happens naturally. The body does not need to be forced into fat loss. It simply needs the right environment to function as it was meant to. Once inflammation is gone, fat burning and energy production are the natural state, not the exception. By addressing inflammation through consistent, mindful changes in nutrition, sleep, stress, and environment, anyone can experience this shift. It doesn't matter how long the body has been inflamed or how entrenched fatigue has become. The potential for repair is always present. Every healthy meal, Every night of deep sleep, every walk in fresh air is a signal to the body. You are safe, you can heal. The mitochondria respond, the hormones rebalance, and the entire system begins to thrive again. This is the essence of metabolic transformation, a journey from chronic inflammation and exhaustion to lasting fat burning and vitality. The process requires patience and consistency, but the rewards are extraordinary. Once inflammation is reduced, the body regains the freedom to function as it was designed to. Energy becomes abundant, weight stabilizes naturally, and a deep sense of well-being takes root. By choosing to calm inflammation, you reclaim the biological power that has always been yours, the power to feel alive, clear-headed, and full of sustainable energy every single day.